is we are talking about education issue, and then we're just discussing the statement that was issued by the finance ministry. We're joined on the line by an auditor, an accountant based in the UK, and also chairman of the NDC UK Ireland chapter, Mr. Conrad Dumbah. Thank you very much for your time. Good morning to you. Oh, well, we'll try and see if he can hear us. Mr. Dumbah, can you hear us? Hello. Hello, can you hear us, sir? Chairman. Well, we'll try. We'll try and see if we can get him back on the line. We'll be doing that shortly. Taking us to some 27 minutes past 9. Let's try again. Let's try. Let's just try again and see if we can get him back on the line. We'll also be speaking to Dr. Sidi Ali on this issue. And then, of course, we are still following Ayawaso East, the by-election. Chairman, good morning.
Good morning, my brother. How are you?
I'm doing, and I hope you are too.
Oh, by the grace, we can't complain.
Well, first, let's start with your own views on the statement that was issued by the finance ministry. What, in your view, is that because the finance ministry seems to be announcing an expiry of a restriction? When you look at our conditions currently, do you think we are in the position to go back to that market?
So, thank you very much, and a very good morning to your great listeners. Back to the question. I think that there's no better time for Ghana to go back to the domestic bond market, if I might be very, very, very specific. And there are many good reasons why. When this government took over, one of the first things we did was to make sure that we try and restore confidence in the investor public, the local investor population. So basically, every single person whose debt had been restructured, we ensured that we were on top of the payments. We did not default. Unlike the previous government that restructured debt and even failed to honor their own terms of restructuring and so on and so forth. So that has brought some form of confidence into the market. Then you look at the macroeconomic fundamentals as we speak. Inflation is at record lows, as about 3.4 as the last time we spoke. Treasury yields, or if you like, the interest on treasury has also come down to single digits as we speak. That tells you that the domestic investors have taken some form of confidence in the treasury market. Remember, just before the predecessor government left, there was a time when they went to the market for even treasuries, and people were not prepared to give them money on treasury bills because they had destroyed that long established confidence in government debt, that it is sacrosanct, it should never be defaulted on. They had defaulted on it. So confidence is back. So if you look on the supply side in terms of confidence, it is back. We are getting over subscriptions on our bills, even at low single digit treasury bill rates. It tells you that the market has got the interest too. Then you look at government's capacity. If government has done a couple of things, and I only focus on two that will tell you the full story. One of them, let me focus on the main one, the Public Finance Management Act, Act 1136, that was passed last year. One of the things it did was to entrench fiscal discipline in our system. Practically, one of the key fiscal discipline things it put there was the no certificate, no procurement rule. In the past, we know our debt burden has been caused by rampant procurement when we don't need it and don't have the capacity. By streamlining to make sure that the Ministry of Finance is in full control. If they don't issue a certificate saying we have the money to pay, the capacity to pay, you cannot issue contracts. So those days when procurement contracts were flying left, right, and center are gone. Two, we also put in there two key things for fiscal responsibility or prudence. One was making sure that every year, when we have got the total revenue from government and we are taking out all of government's basic cost, excluding interest payments, what we get is usually called primary balance. Overall balance is when you deduct everything, including the debt payment. But the rule we put there was our total revenue minus our total expenditure, which does not yet include debt or interest payments, must be in a surplus position of at least 1.5%. This is a very prudent approach. And crucially, we also said we wanted to make sure that our debt to GDP ratio will come down to 45% by 2034. But because of the excellent work and foundation that has been laid by Honorable Dr. Atuforson and the Finance Ministry, we were able to achieve this 45% in 2025. So we actually achieved it 10 years early, if not 9 years early. So if you look at all that stage, government has cleaned the stables and now has the capacity, right? Has the capacity to take on that debt. So what does that mean? By lifting these restrictions, what we are now saying is we are able to go back to the domestic bond market to issue bonds. At the moment, monies that would have been issuing as bonds were issuing as treasury bills. That is not good for government because of two things. Bonds are long term, and in finance, the longer the term, the lower the interest. So if I'm giving you a 20-year bond, you are more likely to get, I might give you maybe say 5%. But if I'm giving you a 1 year or 30-day treasury bill, and I'm giving you what? Because it's a short-term one, you are more likely to have what? A higher interest. So the one borrowing short-term is penalized. Government borrowing through treasury bills is what? Penalized. We were forced to be penalized when we effectively were forced by the IMF to, if you like, restrict ourselves from long-term bonding, bond issuance. But now, if we're able to lift that and carry on with the fiscal prudence we have, it means that instead of renewing these treasury bills every 3 months, if you take a 10-year bond, you don't keep renewing it that way. So the cost of issuance in itself will be savings to government, number one. The price itself will be lower in terms of the rate because long-term bonds attract lower interest compared to short-term credit facilities like, if you like, treasury bills. So I fully support this, and I think Ghana is in the right place. The important thing is that as we borrow and we manage to use it very well, and if you look at the debt ceilings and the debt restrictions we put on ourselves, I think this is a good thing, and I think government is ready for it now.
Ready, but should we?
We are already doing it. That's question one. If we didn't need to, then I'll say why go into it. But what we have here is government is already taking local debt through treasury bills. If you remember, what's if you remember, what is happening now is that every single week we go to the market for treasury bills. Every single month we are taking treasury bills, meaning government needs it. So if government did not need it and was not borrowing and is now going to borrow new, I would have advised, ask yourself, do you need it? And if you don't need it, why go for it? But the reality is that government, in fact, Oforiata switched completely to treasury bills, heavy over reliance on treasury bills. When we took over, they were doing as much as 6.4 billion cedis of treasury bills every single week. That's over 24 billion of treasury bills every month. That was being rolled over. So every week we go to the market and roll over. Each time you roll over, even if you are paying no money, but there's somebody sitting in that office there whose job is to roll over the weekly one. This Friday we roll over. By Monday we are starting the processes for rolling over on Friday again. So you have one full-time person sitting there doing that. If you were to move this a longer-term bond, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, then this person's time will be spent on something better. So the reality is we are already doing it, but we are doing it in short-term treasury bills that are more expensive. If we now switch back to bonds because we have got sustainability, we have the structures, you have value for money office, you have debt ceilings, you have we put in place sinking fund arrangements to prepare to pay our debts as we used to do before 2017. If we put all those in place and we then move from this short-term heavy reliance on treasury bills into bonds, we'll be reducing the cost of borrowing to government, the effort of borrowing to government. And I'm sure as an investor, I would prefer to have a long-term bond that keeps paying me, if I go on pension, keeps paying me a set amount for a certain period than every week treasury bill renewal and so on and so forth. So I think that it's necessary.
So for you, is the cost-effective way for government to borrow?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, if government is not borrowing, then government shouldn't go into it. But if government is borrowing at high short-term rates, And it is prudent that government goes long term. Let me give make it like a personal example. If you have an overdraft to your bank, oftentimes overdraft rates can be very punitive and very high. But when you go for a loan, that loan might even have some security. That means that the loan value is very low. So if you find that you are constantly running an overdraft and incurring punitive overdraft charges or high interest rates, if your overdraft is charging you 10% a month, and you are able to get even a loan that charges you 10% per annum the full year, if you take the 10% per month overdraft, that's about 120% aggregate grossed up a year. But if you keep it at a loan of 1 year for 10%, that is less than 1% a month. So it's just logical that you, the borrower, engage in long-term, low-cost borrowing if you need to, than having to fall back on short-term, expensive borrowing for the same money which you are going to use for the same project. If I go for 10% per month overdraft to build a factory, by the end of the year, I pay 120% on the same 10% facility. So if the value of the loan I went for to build it was say 10 million, and I'm paying 10% a month, that's 1 million a month. At the end of the year, I paid how much? 12 million for a 10% loan. But if I take 10 million loan at 10% for the year, at the end of the year, I've only paid what? 1 million. You can see the difference in cost and how it makes sense that an entity with the capacity to borrow, which is borrowing, should structure its portfolio towards more of the long-term borrowing, which gives you lower cost than short-term borrowing.
Well, yeah, clearly, by explanation, we need the money. The fact that we are even borrowing on the treasury bill market, like you said, means we need money. We'll borrow anyway. But I wonder what this government will be doing to ensure that we don't get back to that situation.
So, and that is a good question that you have asked. And some of the things I outlined that will stop us getting there. One of the things is making sure our debt to GDP is now written into law. The target is that by 2034, we must be hitting what? 45% debt to GDP ratio, which is about 5% below the good practice internationally. In fact, the government has not just set that target. Then somebody will say, oh, we deliberately put 2034 because we will not be in government. Somebody will come and inherit it, and it's not possible to reach. No, the government actually set the target and hit that 45% target in year one. What it tells you that Ghana has the capacity to hit it. That even giving ourselves 9 years to get there, we've done it in year one. All it means is that we keep the fiscal discipline that went in to make sure that we hit that target, making sure there's price stability. Inflation is coming down, which is one of the good things we need. Making sure that the cedi is stabilized. Our cedi is at a good stable level. We have shaved off as much as 150 billion cedis from our debt through cedi stability. And so I think that those structures in place, if we carry on in this state where we have low price, very good price stability in terms of low inflation, we have very stable currency, we ensure that initiatives like Gold Board are maintained, and fiscal prudence. Remember, Dr. Atuforson last year engages in a massive fiscal contractional activity. In other words, he cut a lot of cost. A lot of fat was cut off our state budget to help us come down to this level and bring our debts to sustainable levels. And that has given us the space to be able to honor our debts because the debts are within our debt appetite. So I think the government has done the right things, put in place the right infrastructure to ensure that we are stable in debt sustainability and that we are able to pay our debts. So that groundwork has already been laid before we are back. If we keep on with 1.5% primary surplus every year, keep on at 45% debt to GDP ratio, keep on at low single digit inflation as we are having it. And if we carry on in this pace, we'll see it be in deflation mode. If we keep on making sure we have currency stability as we have it, then it is very prudent and actually cheap for us to engage in long-term borrowing to support the developmental projects that we have.
Things look good currently, but I wonder because I know you are in the UK. Should you be apprehensive over the impact this particular assault on Iran, with Iran then responding, will have on perhaps an economy like ours? Do we have a huge cause for worry?
We should have cause for concern because our economy is not, it's famously said that no man is an island, and equally, no country is an island. We are connected to the global network. There are two fronts. One, at present, the level of exposure and risk is somewhat minimized. Why do I say so? It's somewhat minimized because of a number of things, and I won't go into all of them. One of them is our exposure to foreign debt is effectively minimized, if not stable. We are not able to borrow from the foreign market. If we were heavily reliant on foreign investor borrowing, like we were a couple of years ago, before we went bust, then any tilt in the markets that would spook investors would have caused them to try to withdraw their monies and would have been exposed. We are now largely tilted towards domestic borrowing. And this is where one of these domestic bonds is a good idea because it's in the hands of Ghanaians. I'm not sure of any Ghanaian who will have a government bond or treasury bill and then hear that Trump has crazily gone off to bomb another country and decides I'm going to collect my money back from commercial bank because of Trump in the US. So we are somewhat insulated from that angle. A country that tends to have a lot of your debt domestically, you are somewhat protected from some of these international forces. Again, because of gold board, you'll notice that when the dollar is under siege, when international markets are under siege because of uncertainty, because of war, people run into commodities, stable commodities like gold that have held their sway since the days of Adam. Fortunately for us, we're a net exporter of gold. So that is one positive. Because you certainly see that the price of gold has zoomed up since the war started on Saturday. It means that the gold that we had to sell, if the price of gold goes up by $2,000 per ton, now we are better off to a certain extent. But that being said, we import a lot from other countries. We are still connected to the environment. For example, oil. Oil price has equally gone up to about $80 per barrel. And you and I know that the price of oil in the international market is one of the factors we put in when we are determining domestic petrol or diesel prices. So I expect that the automatic adjustment mechanism will lead to some increase in domestic fuel prices. But the state in which government is now, we are so fortunate. Imagine this had happened when we were broke in December 2022. Imagine we were in 2024 and this situation had happened. Ghana had no fiscal buffers at all. We couldn't even pay our debt. We were even struggling to survive. Now Ghana in a such better place. All the fiscal buffers that have been put in place by Dr. Atufosa under President Mohammed's stewardship, they are going to make sure they bail us out. All the good work we did in gold board, meaning that we are making good money from gold board. With a recent price increase over the last 3 days, we are going to have a massive windfall from gold. So we are best positioned to be able to go through these trying times. But of course, we will be impacted in one way or the other. But I think we are much better positioned now to go through these times than we were 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
Thank you. Thank you very much for speaking to us.
You're welcome, my brother. Have a good day.
You too. Chairman Conrad Dumbah, NDC UK Ireland Chairman, also a UK-based auditor, accountant, and of course, finance person. 45 minutes past 9 here in the studios of Radio Gold 90.5 FM. We have one last break to take. When we come back, we'll speak to Dr. C.D. Ali on this issue.
When nations rise, it begins with bold conversations. When economies grow, it is driven by partnership. This April, Ghana's business and policy leaders converge at the Pro Business Forum 2026, the nation's premier platform for investment, enterprise, and economic transformation. With special guest of honor, His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama, joining captains of industry, financial institutions, investors, and entrepreneurs.
The Pro Business Forum is more than just an event. It is a call to action. And so let us work together to build a Ghana that is competitive, productive, and inclusive, and a Ghana that creates opportunities for all.
Come, let's engage in high-level dialogue, explore industry exhibitions, build powerful networks, and unlock real opportunities from finance and insurance to manufacturing, agribusiness, SMEs, and innovation. This is where it all happens. From the 3rd to the 5th of April, 2026, at the Kwo Convention Center, Etibie, go to www.kwobusinessforum.com and register now. To register for exhibitions, call 059 555 5885 or 059 555 59 0995. Pro Business Forum. Connect, promote, grow.
Miato mi do to anyanto ya Chicago club ro ye ya dogo amanchinya gbogbo planyato fi to ti manyo apasa manyo apasa do badu yata mi do to.
Fellow Ghanaians are citizens of Omofia. Radio Gold is back. And so is Kokosa reporting. And so it's on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays at 5:30 p.m. And it is the same objective, no nonsense commentary on pertinent religious, social, political, economic, sports issues. So be my guest and bring your advertisements too, even if they send the tax report to come and audit you suddenly. Because you get your results. My name is Efo Daoud Bidan Kosivi Kosi Kokosa Achka Akofusi, and I invite you to make a date. It's on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays at 5:30 p.m. See you. Ever.
Are you ready to revolutionize the future of agriculture? The Ministry of Trade, Agribusiness and Industry, in partnership with the Ghana Exim Bank, proud